So it's really interesting running these 6 sessions and comparing this to my experience at World Mind to my experience in public school. Because like so many things in life, I often work on this like pendulum, right? So in public school, I really tried my hardest to make connections with kids and have that be my primary way of behavior management. However, I had a super strict behavior management regimen, right? I had a 3-strike policy, and I let kids know that that was not my goal, that I wanted to just simply help them through whatever it was that they were dealing with, but that ultimately, that I wasn't going to allow their behavior to disrupt every other learner in the classroom. And then when I worked at World Mind, I started thinking critically about the way that we discipline, particularly in public school, and what's wrong with that model, and how we're stifling kids, and we're not allowing them to make mistakes, and we're being far too restrictive, right? But at World Mind, I witnessed even my own kid, and I think this is why I struggle with it so much, without those guidelines in place, without those boundaries in place, he and a couple other kids, there were a lot of feelings hurt. There were a lot of kids who probably didn't feel super safe in that environment because there were almost no restrictions on behavior. It was, I think now, too open and allowed children, I think, to not enough guidance in how they interact with their peers, I think is really what it was. So now that we've run our own 6 sessions, now that I've run my own 6 sessions, and I got to see Cassie run her own 6 sessions, I feel like I'm landing in this middle place, right, where behavior can negatively impact other kids in the class, and that's not fair. It's not fair if you have kids that are excluding other kids, who are yelling at other kids, who are putting other people down to get what they want. That's not okay. It creates an unsafe learning environment, unsafe in the sense of, I'm allowed to be hurt in this environment, and that's not okay. I don't want kids coming to my class and having hurt feelings happen, but if it's repetitive and continual, that's not okay. So I'm realizing that some boundaries do have to be in place, but that can happen while still honoring kids' individuality and their own, form of self-expression. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. So how it showed up in my own 6 sessions, Ryder was by far the biggest personality. Trace also has the potential to have a big personality. He was so easy though. The biggest thing with him that I noticed is responding positively to him. He was super, super silly, and just allowing that silliness to be. And, I told him a couple times how funny I thought he was, and he just lit up, and it helped him be more open. The couple times that I had to ask something of him, it was just easy. I just said, can we do this? Or can you please stop this? And it was just, yeah. And that was it. But I've heard from some of Cassie's interactions with him that it can be difficult sometimes. So I just think that it's, I only saw him 2 hours a day for 6 weeks. So I'm sure there could, be some things there. But for me personally, it was Reese and Ryder that were the hardest for me. Ryder also tends to be very loud and very, he's a big personality, and he can sometimes have really strong reactions to things. So I think I mean, one of the keys was really diffusing things by helping him be responsible for his actions, but not be faulted for them, not be made to be wrong, but instead shift the focus to, how do we make this better? We made a mistake, right? It happens to everybody. How do we make it better? I think that was a pretty big takeaway for him, I'm hoping, and I think I would definitely work on that more in the future with him if I had the opportunity. But I think it was really important for the other kids to see me helping him work that out, right? Not allowing his behavior to hurt others, whilst maintaining my idea that I think Ryder's a good person and that he doesn't need to be punished for it. We just need to, work through it, figure it out, and make it right. Like, I think that that's hugely important for other learners to see, because that helps them feel safer in that environment. And I got to see the same thing with Cassie's class as well. It's interesting, there was almost no behavior concerns in her class until towards the end. And then one of her sibling groups, maybe 3 times, had really strong feelings about things. Mostly it was due to projects they had worked on that in some way or another got messed up. And they both had really, really big feelings. And it was kind of the same thing. No one tried to tell them that they were wrong for their big feelings at all. We tried to honor them. We tried to, a couple of different things, giving them space, seeing how we could help them, showing compassion towards them, and instead of just making their outburst wrong. I think that if we had just made it wrong, we would have been saying, your feelings aren't welcome here, your feelings aren't okay here, you're wrong for having these feelings. I think that if we had disciplined in a certain way, that's what we could have communicated. And I think that that's what gets communicated a lot to younger kids. Instead of, wow, I see you're having these big emotions. That's cool, that's fine, you can have these big emotions. How can I help you, shift this or move this, or do you need space? What is it that you need to work out these big emotions? Like, it's just a completely different dialogue. And, in the case of the kids in Cassie's class, it was pretty easy to work through. They had their big emotions. And then once we figured out what it was about, people in the class helped them resolve what they were upset about. And it was really, really awesome. And actually, something else that I thought was really cool is that, in Cassie's class, particularly with one kid, she was bringing emotions from home to the class. And I actually think that that's awesome. Like, the fact that this is a safe enough space for her to bring her sadness that came from elsewhere to the class, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. Even for a 7-year-old, that's still not an easy thing to do. And I loved that was something that she felt comfortable doing with us. So yeah, that's my thoughts on behavior.